Alright, what's going on, guys? This is Mias, and today I'm actually going to be discussing Pot of Prosperity and kind of compare it to the other pots. So is this pot actually better than the others? Definitely going to see this in this video, and before I start, friendly reminder to like and subscribe because it motivates me a lot to keep making videos like these. And yet, let's jump right into it. Alright, so for starters, there's actually kind of a couple of pot families out there. There is the Greed family, where, you know, Pot of Greed, Pot of Desires, Pot of Avarice, Pot of Extravagance. That family of pot is, you know, the pots that actually draw cards. For the most part, they actually either have drawbacks or they have activation requirements. For example, Avarice, you need to recycle back 5 monsters in your graveyard to the deck, and then you get to draw 2, but there's no drawbacks after that. Pot of Desires is kind of a condition that is also a drawback because you have to banish the top 10 cards from your deck face down, and also it is a hard once per turn. So the issue with that is that you don't actually get to choose the cards that you banish, and also they're banished face down, so they have no added value. And unless you're using specifically cards like Cyframe Lord Omega or Virtual World Nyan Nyan, it's really hard to get back those cards. I guess there's Necroface, but not everybody plays those gimmicky cards. Unless you're playing Grand Maju, of course, this is definitely what you want to play because it's actually going to boost the attack of your Grand Maju by 4,000. This is why everybody can kind of benefit off of every single pot. And of course, there's Pot of Extravagance, which is a really popular pot. And the reason for that is because the payment that you do isn't even from your main deck, but only from your extra deck. Meaning that if you're playing a trap-heavy strategy that doesn't really involve or doesn't really need the extra deck too much and can actually just do very well with the main deck like Eldritch or Altergeist, well, Pot of Extravagance is actually definitely great for you. Pot of Prosperity, on the other hand, actually belongs to the Duality family. So pots that actually excavate from the top of the deck, they don't actually draw cards, they search in a way, so they actually do lose to Mistake, which is funny because when you actually think of search, you actually don't really think of, oh, you know, excavate and then add it to your hand. But yes, indeed, this would actually lose to Mistake, this would lose to Shared Ride, Mistaken Arrest, etc., which isn't necessarily the end of the world, but is definitely something that you have to keep into consideration when you are playing a card like Pot of Prosperity or Pot of Duality. Now, Pot of Prosperity actually has a lot of utilities that the other pots don't actually have, and the reason why I truly believe that this is actually a much better version than Duality is that it doesn't have the annoying drawback of not being able to special summon the turn you use this card, and you have no idea how insanely relevant that is, because especially the way Yu-Gi-Oh! Is evolving, I feel like ever since, you know, like 2014, 2015, etc., Duality is just no longer playable. You really need to special summon consistently, otherwise you're really late behind. If you're not special summoning, then you're relying on trap cards to win, like way too much, and the issue with that is that you start losing to side deck cards like Harpy's Feather Duster, Lightning Storm, and Evenly, and you can even argue that they aren't even necessarily side deck cards, sometimes they're actually main deck. So if you just always like place all your eggs into that basket of just setting a bunch of trap cards and hopefully it gets you there, well, maybe this is obviously not the correct strategy if you keep losing because of that. Now, one really extremely important thing that I have to mention about Pot of Prosperity is the fact that it actually allows you to choose which cards you banish from the extra deck, and that's actually really important. Extravagance actually banishes at random, and also one thing about Extravagance is that you actually get to choose between 3 or 6, just like Pot of Prosperity, but the issue is that in Pot of Extravagance, when you only banish 3, it actually just ends up being a worse upstart, because you banish 3 cards from your extra deck, which is already kind of neggy, especially since it's a random. You can't draw any cards during the turn you use this, and also you can only use 1 Pot of Extravagance per turn, all of that just to draw 1 card. So pretty much you're getting your money back. So it's not the best out there, it's not the best value, whereas in Pot of Prosperity, if you're actually only banishing 3, then it actually acts as a better duality, exactly just like I said. And if you're banishing 6, then it's actually really interesting because you can excavate 6 cards and then take any of them to your hand, and then they are obviously all placed on the bottom of the deck. So it's actually kind of nice too, because if you have Pot of Duality, then you can use Duality right away, and you are sure that you're not going to get those 5 other cards that you placed back into the bottom of your deck. So it increases the odds of you actually have consistent playable hands. Pot of Prosperity is literally the perfect definition of quality over quantity, and what I mean by that is that since you actually only get 1 card, you're pretty much only refunding your money, and you are choosing that card, which means that you're actually, maybe you're spending $5 to get $5 in return, but the $5 that you spent was kind of like, you know, completely ripped and it was destroyed. It wasn't really a clean $5 bill, but the $5 that you're getting back is really clean, it's beautiful. Maybe that's not the perfect example, but Desires, Extravagance, and all of that, yeah, sure, you're getting more than what you spent, but at the same time, maybe it actually comes with a debt, and you might actually have to pay that debt in the future, and that's not something that everybody wants, you know? Sometimes it actually looks really interesting to be able to buy that house for cheaper, but then you realize, oh, the interest rate is actually insane insane. I'm actually gonna get screwed in the future if I don't actually have enough money. And this is actually when it starts hurting you, is when you realize later on that your your reward is not that rewarding and it's actually messing you up completely. So desires and extravagance, even though you are getting one more card, they actually do come with a much higher price. So a perfect example of why quality really is that important, even over quantity, is, let's just say you're playing Infernos, okay? A hand of, you know, whatever, we want to say 5 Infernoed monsters, we can all say that it's not the best. It's not really good unless you have like Decatron and like Patrulia or whatever, so you can make Chaos Ruler Demonic, Excavate 5 and stuff like that. But let's just say it's like 5 big Infernoids. You can't really do any Xyz plays, not the best. You have to neg a lot every single time you commit a monster on the field, whereas if you actually have Void Banishment and any other card, just any discard, and like nothing else, even though it's like 3 less cards than the 5 card Infernoid hand, I want to say it's still a much better hand because you have so many options. You can go Imagination going second, which instantly sends you at least 6 Infernoids from your deck to the graveyard just to activate the Imagination, well, to resolve it, and then it summons you a Tierra, pops a lot of cards on your opponent's field because you can send Elder Entity Entis. It can just do so much in mills. That Void Imagination is resolving to actually completely have a huge impact on the game, and also if you're going first, you can actually get Void Feast, which is also better than the 5 card Infernoid hand, because not only do you summon 3 Infernoids, your 2 Decatrons are actually going to pitch 2 Infernoid monsters from your deck to the graveyard, so you're also going to get 5 Infernoids, which means that up until now, we're already even, but it gets even better because your Infernoid monsters, they're already on the field, 3 out of 5, so you have 2 negations, and you have a DD Crow on your field. So it's kind of like if you drew that 5 card Infernoid hand with 3 other cards, like Solemn Judgment, Solemn Strike, and DD Crow. So it's pretty much having like an 8 card hand against a 2 card hand. I hope you kind of understand why hand size in Infernoids doesn't necessarily matter, and I feel like you can definitely really extrapolate easily on this. A lot of decks, right, sometimes they have a bunch of cards in their hand that they can't do anything, and then as soon as they draw that 1 card, all of a sudden they can play. Another good example would be Cyber Dragons. Cyber Dragons, they can't really play any other pot cards. Avarice would be unplayable. Desires would suck. You play too many one-ofs. Extravagance is just out of the question because your extra deck is just way too relevant, and also some of the extra deck cards are also 1 or 2 ofs, which means that you're kind of always taking a huge risk every single time you use a pot card. In general, when I say pot, I mean especially Desires and Extravagance, whereas Prosperity is actually just so much better because not only do you get to choose, you also get to choose which card you take. So you choose what you want to pay. Sometimes, let's just say you're playing against a non-machine deck, you're just gonna say, oh, I don't need Chimera Tech Fortress Dragon in this matchup. Whatever, I can just afford to banish it. You see where this is going? Whereas, you know, Extravagance, oh no, I banished all my Mega Fleets, all my Nova, all my Infinity. I guess I can't really play the game too much. Now, Eldritch would actually be a pretty bad example or display of this usage of Product Prosperity, because in Eldritch, I mean, I guess all of your cards are really trap cards for the most part, so they don't really discriminate from each other. At the end of the day, if you go like Duality or Prosperity, Excavate like Torrential, Strike, Needle Sealing, whatever, it barely changes anything which one you take. Whereas if you go Extravagance and actually draw 2, just any 2 out of these 3 or whatever really is kind of always better in a way. So I want to say Extravagance is still much better than Pot of Prosperity in Eldritch, and also this is completely supported by the fact that people are still playing Extravagance even though they do have the opportunity to play Pot of Prosperity as well, or I guess instead. But there is one deck actually that combines 2 pots in the same deck list. That is actually Virtual World. So they do play Pot of Desires and Pot of Prosperity, sometimes either at 1 or at 2, which can make sense for multiple reasons. If you only play 1, then maybe if you have Crossout Designator and your opponent uses Pot of Prosperity, you can actually banish that one of Pot of Prosperity. But if you draw it and you don't have Desires, well, it's kind of that good substitute. Or if you draw Desires and Pot of Prosperity, well, the second pot that you don't really need in the given context, depending on the other cards that you have in your hand, it doesn't matter. You can just discard it for the King Long or Zhuang Hu discard. So at the end of the day, you're not really losing too much. I guess you can say the exact same thing with ABC. If you have Desires and Pot of Prosperity, the other one could actually just get discarded by ABC Dragon Buster. So, whatever. Conclusion, if your deck cannot afford to have a non-special summoning clause or randomly banish cards from a main deck or extra deck, I definitely do believe that Pot of Prosperity is definitely the way for you to go because it is the most generic. Right now it is a bit expensive, but don't worry, every single pot card always gets a reprint down the line eventually, so you don't really have to worry too much about that for now. And besides, this is still Corona format, so nothing is preventing you from playing the cards online if you don't want to spend for them in real life. So yeah, that's all I had to say for this video. I hope you guys were were able to learn a thing or two. If you guys have any comments or feedback or suggestions or other videos that you want me to make, definitely let me know in the comment section below. Don't forget to like and subscribe because it motivates me a lot to keep making videos like these. And that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.